Start that. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get it started? Welcome to Some of My Best Friends Are Black, a courageous conversation about race and relationships. And we're going to explore 5 truths today that kind of challenge the notion that proximity to Black people or having Black friends makes one a non-racist. But before we get into that, I would like to introduce the panel to you today. So 2 of my illustrious colleagues that are members of the EPOC, I'll just say EPOC for short, are going to be joining me today to help facilitate our discussion. But this is just not a discussion amongst the 3 of us, guys. I want to hear the voice of the people. Join in our conversations today. We're going to carry it to an extent, but we're also going to open it up and ask everybody on the call today to share their thoughts, opinions, experiences around the truths that we're going to be going over today. I think it'll just make for a more informed conversation, a more rich conversation today. Okay, so let me just start by introducing myself, and then I'll pass the baton over to Grace. So I am John Howard. They call me J-How. I'm the Chief Project Officer within the Judge Consulting Group. I've been with Judge 10 years, and this is my second tour of duty. I came back, I guess, about a year ago. And so I'm glad to be back and glad to be a part of this diversity and inclusion initiative, leading the EPOC. Okay. Grace, tell us about yourself, please.
Awesome. So hi, I'm Grace Moran. I'm a tech recruiter with JTS Tri-State. So I'm also an anti-racist, and this is a big thing about this meeting today. So my goal is to make you feel uncomfortable. I want you to have those moments of discomfort, listening to things that you have never heard of before, and kind of realize what is actually going on. You may not be aware of it. So my big question off the bat for you is, when is the last time you were uncomfortable because of the color of your skin?
Wow.
I'll let that one sink in a little bit. So next up, we have Gerald.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that. My name is Gerald Davis. I am a recruiting lead here with Judge. My friends refer to me as G. So everyone here refer to me as G. You are my friends. I've been here for right under a year, and I'm really excited to be a part of this change that is going to be sweeping across the corporate world. So.
All right, Gerald. Well, thank you so much. And it looks like we've got over 40 people on the call today. So thank you, everybody, for taking time to join us today for this conversation. So before we get into the 5 truths, I want to just kind of set the table for the discussion. How many of you are familiar with Governor Ralph Northam, governor of Virginia, and his story from a few years ago that came out? So for those of you who don't know his story, so Governor Northam grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and the high school he attended was about 50-50 Black and white students. That kind of represented my experience as well. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of went to a school that was probably more like 60 white, 40 Black, something like that. But basically, he was in an environment that it was a very mixed environment growing up. And the people of that town want you to know that Governor Northam did not have a racist bone in his body. And the reason why they say that is because he had Black friends. So that was really the impetus of our theme today. Some of my best friends are Black. And we're going to kind of challenge that notion that just because you have Black friends or acquaintances makes you a non-racist. And again, one of his childhood friends growing up said he is the last person on earth that would be racist. Now, why are people saying this about him? And I'm going to share with you why, okay? For those who knew him, said he could not have had any bigoted intentions when he darkened his face with shoe polish to dress like Michael Jackson for a dance contest. And these are actual facts, guys, okay? He did these things. He darkened his face with shoe polish and to dress like Michael Jackson for a dance contest. He put a photo in his medical school yearbook of a man in blackface standing to someone wearing a KKK robe, okay? So why would somebody who is a non-racist do some of these weird kind of racist things, and exhibit some of these racist behaviors? That's the question we want to ask today. And then his defenders are channeling a tried and true myth that proximity to Blackness immunizes white people from having attitudes that are rooted in racism. Okay. So kind of the impetus for the call today. Okay. Any thoughts or comments? Does anybody know about this story? Are you familiar with the story? Do you know anything more, or would you like to add anything to this background before we get into the discussion items? Okay, I just want to share again with you. Here's an example of his medical school yearbook, and here's that picture on the right, where he's showing the guy with blackface, and I'm not sure who that is. I'm not sure if it's him or somebody else standing next to the guy with the KKK robe. Now, let me just ask this question right off the bat. Does this in and of itself imply that he's a racist? And if you don't, and believe me, I want to hear from you, whether you agree with it or not. I just want to know your opinions. Do you feel like doing something like this implies a form of racism, or is it just innocent? What are your thoughts, guys?
I think being so lighthearted about like such a sensitive topic is the problem.
That's
It's
good, Herb.
insensitive, at least.
Love it. Insensitive, at least. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
at
you for
least.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Anybody else have any thoughts on just what we're talking about right now with this particular case?
I think it shows a lack of understanding of how serious or how offensive it can be.
Got you. And Allison, thank you for speaking up. Allison, you shared something with us during our last EPOC meeting about your understanding or opinion about blackface and how it changed. Could you just share briefly your experience with this?
Of course. So I have a theater background, and I had a discussion that came out of my college experience with one of my friends who is a person of color. And we were talking about the importance of blackface within theater specifically, not necessarily out in the community, but in theater. And I was saying, because theater is a representation of the world, it should hold an important place in specific scenarios or a specific play that's about that time period. And my friend was very nice in the way that she put it to me about how it is still offensive, even if we believe that theater can be a representation of society. It still doesn't really hold a place in today's world. There are better ways of showing that art form without actually doing blackface. So that was something that I had to learn, and kind of very much understood after the conversation I had with one of my friends. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Allison, for sharing that. Okay.
Yeah.
John,
Yes, sir.
if you don't mind, just to interject really quickly, I've found that a lot of people are subject to their surroundings. And, we are looking at myself. There are certain things that I've grown up believing since I was a kid, right? And so my perspective has been this way for several years. I think a lot of people don't actually realize how insensitive they're being. And that is, the point of this conversation today.
Absolutely. In fact, we're going to do a deep dive on that particular point in a couple slides. Gerald, thank you for that.
I'd like to speak. I'd like to
Go ahead,
speak on
Jason.
the topic matter.
Sure.
Absolutely, I think is racist. I want to take it back to back in, I believe it was the 1920s, the movie called Birth of a Nation. It was a movie by the KKK coming to saving the town. And in the movie, the white people in the movie were dressed in blackface. They was characterized as the black people as monsters, as trying to kidnap this white woman and Yeah, and the Ku Klux Klan was the superheroes to come see it. So
Mm,
blackface has been prominent since Hollywood for the longest. So with that being said, with the history behind the blackface and the minstrel shows from the 40s and the 50s, even though you're playing a character you may like or emulate, you don't have to put nothing on your face to symbolize that. You can
mhm.
wear an outfit, wear clothes, wear a t-shirt. But I think once you start putting stuff on your face, I think that's where the racism starts.
Got it. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, and I think that's what Allison was alluding to. She learned that she didn't realize how hurtful that was until somebody brought that out. So thanks for that, Jason. All right, let's get into the first truth. And so the first truth is racism doesn't just show up in its most extreme form. There is indeed a continuum of racist thoughts and behaviors, and you may be on it. I could almost say you are on it. We are on it. None of us are exempt from this racist continuum. Okay. And if we were to kind of split this down the middle, you could see where to the left, you've got your less racist or non-racist, anti-racist domain. To the right, this is where the racist tendencies tend to show up. Okay. So we have a continuum. It's not a binary switch. One of our recent Epoch meetings talked about, is racism a binary switch? It is not a binary switch. It's more like a slide switch or a dimmer switch. Okay, you're not either racist or non-racist. There are degrees of it. Okay, so that's what we're going to explore here with truth number one. So the first thing I want to do is kind of compare the difference between these two aspects of racism, anti-racism and non-racism. So maybe somebody on the panel, somebody in the audience, what do you see as the difference between these two dimensions of racism?
Sure, so I'll go for this one. So anti-racism is somebody who does not ignore that there are differences between racial groups. And they also are active in trying to prevent it and trying to basically end it. That's the main goal for it. So compared to that, non-racism is typically used with phrases of "I see no color," "all lives matter," and that's ignoring the fact that there is a problem and there is differences. So by ignoring the fact that there is racism out there, staying silent, silence is violence. I'm sure you've heard of that before. All of that will fall under non-racism. So the difference between the two is acknowledging it versus trying to blur it between lines for it to not sound like it is a problem.
Thanks, Grace. Good answer. Somebody else, your thoughts on the difference between these two? And I apologize if you have your hand raised, but I don't see it. So just blurt out a response if you'd like.
Hey, John, it's Ryan. The first thing that came to my head was just the word action. So I think anti-racism, there's an action behind it, and non-racism, they're not necessarily, going out there and being an overt racist, but just not doing anything about it, no action.
More passive. Yeah, I see that as well. Thanks, Ryan. Any other thoughts on this side of the line? If not, I'm going to go to the next side. So what's the difference between aversive racism, and perhaps you've not heard that term, but we can get into it. But what do you see the difference between aversive and overt racism? And just think about where these 2 points are on the continuum. That'll probably give you a clue. Somebody.
Whenever I think of that, I personally will kind of think of like someone wanting to avoid neighborhoods that might be majority POC or something like that for averse. So they're like, oh, I'm not racist, but I just don't like that's just not the area for me. And then overt is like, oh, here's why I don't do it, is because I think it, like someone who would like be supportive of the KKK or something like that is like the overt, where it's like they're not even trying to hide it.
Excellent answer. Thanks, Calvin. Yes. Somebody else want to hear some other opinions on this one? Anybody else want to venture in?
Sure, I can add in on adversive of being as you avoiding mixing with other racial groups, other ethnic groups. It's literally you avoiding. So hearing bad neighborhood, you're avoiding that. Is now X'd out of your mindset of where you would like to live. Predominantly, probably because it is a Black neighborhood.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Grace.
I actually think to some degree too, it would be like being like outwardly like racist versus microaggressions. So like full on aggressive versus microaggressions that might be like ingrained in like how you grew up. And
Got
to
it.
some degree.
Thanks, Samantha. So yeah, I think when I think of overt racism, I think of just being bold and out front about the fact that yes, I'm a racist and I'm proud of it, right? Whereas aversive racism is more subtle. It's kind of you kind of keep it to yourself, and it comes out in certain situations, right, where you get uncomfortable. We talked about how the presence of Black people can make certain people feel uncomfortable sometimes, right? And so maybe under those conditions, you know, those deep-seated feelings that are kind of buried, you know, deep down in your consciousness come out under certain environments or in certain situations. So those are the two differences that I see here. Okay. So my last question on this slide is, based on what we know about Governor Ralph Northam and his past racist behaviors, where would you put him on this continuum if you had to put him somewhere? Somebody. What do you think, Jeff Myers? Where would you have put Governor Northam on this continuum?
I guess I would lean towards at least at a minimum aversive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not real familiar with that story. I remember hearing that on the news, but so I don't have enough information to maybe push him to overt, but I would say he definitely falls under at least aversive.
I would agree with that. Somebody else have a different place you'd put Governor Northam on this continuum?
I think that photo like pushes me towards overt.
Oh, okay.
Like just, I mean, yeah, I think he falls in aversive, but he was obviously doing overt things that were very racist.
Yeah.
So like I would definitely put him closer to overt, if not completely.
All right. That's fair, Herb. Thank you. Somebody else. Is it safe to say that he's somewhere between aversive and overt? I think it's safe to say that, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, I cut somebody off.
Yeah, I think he's straddling the fence between the two in the middle. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the $64,000 question. Where do you see yourself? And this is going to take some courage for you to tell us, for you to kind of be vulnerable. Where do you see yourself on this continuum? And I'll start. I see myself somewhere between anti-racist and non-racist. I don't always speak up. I'm not always the activist. Sometimes I keep my mouth shut, and I'm ashamed of it. I can remember a situation where I went to see a client with some colleagues here from Judge about 5 years ago. And the client made a statement. It was in reference to Randall Cunningham back when he was a rookie for the Eagles, and he came in for his first game. And the client said he was in the 700 level with some of his friends, and they were shouting, "Put in the nigger." And I didn't say anything. I was representing Judge. I should have said something, but I didn't. So I'm going to have to say that I'm somewhere between anti and non, depending on the circumstance.
I would have to agree with you, John. I mean, I don't think you did anything wrong by not saying anything, especially because you were representing your company. You know, you need to, make sure that you don't do anything to jeopardize, your job in any way. But I would agree with you. I'm like in between because I am against racism. I do believe heavily in in all people, no matter race, social class, anything like that. But I'm not a forefront type of person. So I had friends who actually went out and protested last year. And I'm just like, be careful because like my support is more in the background. So
Yeah.
I'll donate money, I'll do
Right.
GoFundMe pages. So I'm not a forefront kind of person.
Mhm.
I'm not ashamed of that just because whatever floats your boat. Am I necessarily put my life at risk? No.
Yep.
But will I help the cause? Absolutely.
Mhm. Thanks, Anya. Somebody else? Where would you put yourself on the continuum?
Yeah, John, I'll jump in. This
Okay.
is Megan. I would say similar, like between the anti and the non-racism, and similar to what you and Anya just both said, for me, it's more like the situation I'm in relationships I have to maintain.
Mhm.
And I feel like I was just reflecting on a social situation I'd been in a while back. And the woman made a comment, and I was there with my kids. They were there with friends at a birthday party. And I remember hearing something, and I was just like, I can't believe she just said that.
Mm.
And I got up and left. I didn't say anything.
Mhm.
And, I think I'm also one who doesn't like to cause waves.
Mhm.
But I remember being like, ew, I don't like, I'm leaving. But I was also like, my kids are here, they're friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like, but I felt guilty about it. I didn't say something.
Yeah, I hear
Now,
you.
I feel like with family, if anything ever came up, I feel way more comfortable because we have the bond of love, keeping us together, that we can have those tough conversations and hold each
Right.
other accountable. But
Right.
it's definitely
right.
a situational thing where I wish I was more.
Yeah, I hear you. Thanks, Megan. Just reflecting back on that experience, I was beating myself up for why did he feel comfortable enough to even say what he said in my presence? Like what did that's what really kind of baffled me. Like how'd that happen? Anyway, somebody else, where would you put yourself on the continuum?
For me,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for me personally, I think between anti and non,
Okay. Mhm.
I think it's the setting. I think it's
setting,
where
yes.
your comfort zone. I
Yep.
think according to who you know and what impact you think you're going to make, and is it the right time and the right
Yep.
place
Exactly.
to really take it on or do it later. And sometimes you don't always have the appropriate knowledge to even take them on accurately, appropriately.
Yeah.
So I
Sometimes
think
you're
it varies.
blindsided, right?
Yeah.
Deborah? Just like Megan said, she was blindsided and I was blindsided. I kind of froze in the moment. I was like, I couldn't believe what he just said.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it sounds like it's somewhat situational. Right. Somebody else before we move on to the next truth?
Hey, John, it's Steve Brown. Yeah, I find the same thing. Part of me is it's always like I'm conflict averse. And as soon as you get into that, there's going to be a conflict, and it's like it's situational, like everybody else is saying, and it's not knowing what to do. And either way is wrong. Like the outcome is going to be either you do nothing and you feel horrible, you say something and now a conflict is going to rise. And I don't, sometimes I just don't know what to do. You don't.
Yeah.
That's just me, and it's kind of an excuse, but conflict. It's I don't know what to do.
Yeah. A lot of us are conflict averse. I know I am. I don't like conflict. Right now, JC just went through a managing team conflict training to help us deal with conflict better. Go ahead, Jason.
Last year I had the same stance about not speaking up, especially with the George Floyd protests. And at the time, my family wanted to go out and protest, and I'm like, no, don't do this. Stay out of it. And then as the days went on, I'm like, I stepped up, and I felt like it was my duty to speak out and step up. I've had questioned people off racism, not so much black and white in words, but stereotypes, those kind of things. Just as recently, and it was somebody said something so innocent to me, but I didn't like it. And I pulled them to the side and I told them, I didn't like what you said. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't mean to. But when you say, I could say it, they greeted me with, what's up, killer? And I'm like, I didn't like that at all. Because to me, it's like, do I look like a killer to you? Is it because of the color of my skin that you come out and say, dress me as that? I'm not a killer. Never killed anybody in my life.
Right.
And when I pulled them to the side and I addressed it, it was cool. We shook hands and
Mhm.
I still consider that person a friend. Sometimes I think it's not the person that's racist. I think is not having the education, not
That's
having
it.
that not being enough experience to know certain things to say to certain people how it will
Yes.
reflect on the other person.
Thank you, Jason. You're actually touching on something we're going to get into in a couple slides as well around how we can educate people around those types of things. In fact, I think we're going to get into it right now. Truth too. Even if you personally haven't offended anyone that you know of, you may indeed be part of the problem. So what are some examples of how we can offend people of color without even realizing it? And Jason, I think you just brought up an example. Somebody else, what are some other examples of how we can offend people of color without even realizing it?
I have a few.
Okay.
Because I know I've spoken on this a few times, like stereotype is like a big thing to me because
Mhm.
people really, really like to stereotype, African Americans and then just like African American women. And I definitely can relate to what Jason is saying. Like, no one has said like killer to me, but I do find that like in some professional situations, not at Judge, but in the past, I've been kind of greeted with the like homegirl or
Mm.
like the Shanae girl kind of vibe where it's like, you don't have to do that. You can simply say, "Hi Anya, how are you?"
Yes.
But don't girl me because it's like,
Right.
"Hey girl," or and it's just like,
Yeah.
don't feel like you have to do that. Although you're not trying to be offensive, the fact that you're not comfortable in your own
Mm.
enough to just address me as a colleague, a coworker, a person who bleeds red blood the same as you,
Yes.
to my skin color, that can be offensive. Another thing that I find offensive is like, I'm a single mom, right? And I kind of hate bringing that up or when people ask me about it because the assumption is that I had a child out of wedlock or, it's a situation like that where it's like, and then I personally go above and beyond to let them know, like I was married for 5 years. I'm a divorcee. And then when you put that spin on it, it's kind of like, oh, okay. I thought you get what I'm saying. So it's just like, there are a lot of stereotypes that you just have to battle where it's
Sure.
like people find out you have a child, they don't think you were married. They just think, whatever it is they want to think, and you have to kind of fight off those stereotypes, which can be offensive as well. So
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's not so much that I think in today's world, especially in the office environment, it's not so much as black and white racism. I think it's a stereotype, like Ayana said, it's the straight stereotypes of assuming that just because I'm African American, I know certain things or I know certain dances or slangs or other acronyms. And I'm like, no, just say hi. I'm very approachable. Just say hi. I know I can look intimidating at times, probably what mood I'm in, but I'm very,
And I know Jason can't dance. I've seen him. So no. I'm
Yes,
just
I
kidding.
can't dance. I have 2 left feet. No, he's right. I got 2 left feet.
Thanks, Jason. How about somebody else? What are some examples of how you've offended people without even realizing it? People of color, and you didn't even realize it.
John Howard, I think one, and it was hit on by Anya, is use of just certain phrases that have in some way through pop culture become into a lexicon that are used, that are used generally. I mean, I'll use some examples. It's like, that's ghetto, that's ratchet, things like that, that you hear.
Yeah.
Like, do you really know what you're saying? Do you really know the etymology of that and what that implies? And then exactly like you said, used in just casual office conversation can inadvertently be very offensive. And I think terms like that peek into the zeitgeist, if you will, like aren't always intended to be used for office consumption or amongst people and professionals or friends because they have an offensive context to them. So just be wary of what words you use and kind of where'd you pick that up? You may want to think why you're throwing that around like at the water cooler, if you will.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Thank you for that. How can we help educators? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
John, can I put a certain spin on this?
Go ahead.
Now, I'll admit that I have stereotype against my own people, my own African American people, just by certain neighborhoods or working inside. If I see a group of Black men walking down the street, 9 times out of 10, I may feel uncomfortable because I don't know
Mm.
what's about to go down. So
Mhm.
if I see certain clothing, if I see certain attitudes, if I hear certain language or songs, I feel uncomfortable. So I
Mhm.
have been in situations where I even stereotype against African Americans as well.
How
Not
about that?
because, and so I even I can admit I have done that.
Thank you.
As recent.
Thank you for
Yeah.
being vulnerable about that. I have too. I have too. So thank you, Jason. So I want to actually flip the coin on this truth and ask, how can we help educate our white friends about what is offensive to people of color without being offensive to them?
I can answer some of that.
Okay.
I think that if, before you get upset, and definitely taking time to understand that it's not intentional, but you definitely can educate them just by having them just look up the history of some of the
Mm.
terms, right? Like how, there's a history behind blackface. There's a history
Mhm.
behind a lot of these stereotypes, like Black people and watermelon. I personally do not like watermelon, but there is a stereotype behind watermelon. There's a stereotype. There's so many stereotypes and histories behind a lot of terms, a lot of ideologies, a lot of different things that we experience on a daily. So just like
Right.
doing your research and understanding where things come from,
Mhm.
that would be a start.
Okay.
In just like general education. I think that would be like
Excellent.
the biggest start. Yeah.
Great.
I will
Thanks, Anya.
say, focus on the name more than the color. Obviously, we can't ignore the color. We are who we are, but focus on the person's name. Get to know that person by their names. Don't the black guy or the white guy or the guy with the red hair. Focus more on their name instead of looking at them as certain characteristics or what they live on. Ask them what their name are. That is a great start to getting to know someone, getting to know the person instead of focus so much on the color.
Okay.
Hey, this is Rick Kaniski. How you guys doing? Sorry, I was
Hey, Rick.
jumping in a little late here. Had a call, but wanted to be a part of this. If I could just say what Jason said is brilliant. If you get to know somebody by their first name, generally it's a great start to a positive relationship. You're asking about what can you do to help white people. Essentially, if somebody says something that you find offensive, not if there's overtly offensive, right? There's the time for I would find time for the screaming and the yelling if something is that out of line. But if it's something that maybe somebody doesn't realize is offensive, like Dan said, using pop culture references, something like that, and I think Jason even spoke to it, have that conversation, right? I used to work at a company where they had a carefrontation, right? When you had to have a difficult conversation with somebody, you pulled them aside and you had a straightforward conversation without trying to get any anger into it. And I have to say that might be difficult.
Yeah.
Not being the one offended. But if you can try without anger and more try to get that person to be empathetic to your situation and say, hey, this isn't right. I don't appreciate that. My name is John. My name is Jason. Right? Call me by my name, whatever it is. Just essentially try and nip it in the bud. Right? Don't let something fester. Don't let something linger. I think if you talk about it immediately and can clear the air, either A, you're going to understand that person might just be a bigot and doesn't give a shit, or you're going to understand that, hey, I had an honest conversation with this person and we connected, right? Because I think the more you connect with people, the better off relationships are going to be. And as somebody who was grown up in a lily white area, I can certainly say there's things that I heard and saw growing up that I still fight in my mind to get away from, if I'm being completely honest. I want my kids to be better than I ever was. And that's really the motivation to do it. But again, just starting those relationships and being able to have a conversation, I think is going to really help folks maybe in a situation like mine. Maybe I say something stupid, which isn't out of the realm of possibility, knowing myself. I don't
Thanks,
mean to be
Rick.
long-winded, but I'm just trying to get some things out of my head.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So that kind of brings me back to Truth One, where we talked about the continuum between being anti-racist and non-racist. We need to be more vocal. We need to let people know, that what was said or implied was not acceptable. And if we don't do that, they will not know. We will not, educate them. So in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So I think speak up respectfully, not in an aggressive, combative way, but like you said, Rick, take them aside, let them know, don't call them out in public, maybe. And say, look, I appreciate you not calling me that or using that phrase, when you address me. So healthy conversation.
Hey, John, I just want to say I really appreciate that you say not in public, right? Because sometimes you'll embarrass somebody and then instantly they get defensive.
You shut them off.
Right?
Yeah, you shut it down. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you don't mean to, but sometimes calling somebody out publicly like that, not everybody, but a lot of people's first reaction is to get defensive, and that's
exactly
not where you want to be.
It's not healthy.
Hey, John?
Yes, sir.
Please forgive me. I'm not good with groups and I don't usually speak up, but I just want to say I fully agree with, I'm sorry, Lanya, Rick and Jason about what they say.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that education is key, and I also really think open conversation, and that is not just you saying what's wrong with what they did, but you also have to try to understand why that person is like they are.
Mm-hmm.
Be open to why, because if you just tell them what's wrong, it may not change anything. But if you listen, try to learn why they are like they are. I grew up this way, or I was around these people, or these people talk like this.
Right.
Have an open mind. I mean, to be honest with you, my marriage didn't improve until I sat down with my wife and had an open mind and tried to see why she felt the way she felt.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely, Culver. It's called listen to understand, not listen to respond, but listen to understand.
Habit 5 right there.
I want to piggyback what he just said too. I wanted to piggyback what he just said. It's okay just because we grew up a certain way. Now, both of my parents, they grew up. My dad was born in 48. My mom was born in 51. They racist. They feel how they feel. I was born in 81. They never taught me to be racist. I chose not to be. That's just my character. We can break generational curses. We don't have to take on the thoughts and mindset of our parents. Mm-hmm. Just because our parents, and I understand because they grew up in a tough time. I totally get that. But we don't have to pick up where our parents left off. We can break the generational curse and have our own thoughts, have our own opinions, have our own minds of what we see and how we want to live our lives. So when I hear we was raised a certain way or I grew up in a certain neighborhood, that's because you started there doesn't mean you have to lead there.
True. But it does help to understand why they are where they are. So, but you're right. Totally agree with you, Jason. All right, I'm going to move on for the interest of time to number 3. Gender discrimination and race discrimination are not essentially the same. So this is where I would love to hear our Black women, women of color kind of speak to this in particular, as well as anybody else. But specifically, I want to hear from some of our women on the call. What are some of the unique differences, or what are some of the differences that you've experienced between gender discrimination versus race discrimination? Why are we saying they're not essentially the same? Or maybe you don't agree with this truth. Maybe to you they are the same.
Hi there.
But, hello.
So in regards to gender discrimination versus race discrimination, I would just from a personal experience of gender discrimination, I get a lot of oh, you're a girl and therefore you're not as physically capable of doing these you're emotionally unstable. You never hear a
Okay.
man be called bossy or crazy. Those are strictly for women.
Mm.
And then I haven't personally experienced a racial discrimination yet, but I know that that is something. Let's see, I was a resident assistant in college, and I ran into individuals who would try to flip the script and try and at least I've seen people of color try and discriminate towards white people just to try and help improve the point of this is what they're going through. So instead, they were doing it in an aggressive way that didn't necessarily help the situation. It was a whole thing. But I definitely know that gender and race discriminations have that. There is a line that separates them.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Somebody else, your opinion on this, on the nuances between gender discrimination and race discrimination. What's different about them, other than what Megan's already shared with us? Anybody else want to venture on this?
I can speak a little bit. For me, I'm not sure that there's a difference. If there was any type of discrimination against me, I've always just kind of coined it like race, because I'm Black, because I'm the Black girl on the team. It's never really been like because I am a female. And then just like one example of that is one of my first positions. I had a coworker just like really, she was a white woman, just really violate my space. I guess I had come into work with my hair done a particular way. And she wanted to see my hair. So she proceeded to lift up my hair from the back, in which I feel like if I were a white woman, she wouldn't have done that. Like she wouldn't have touched me. She wouldn't have felt the need to, put her hands in my hair, but it was just so interesting, to her. So I feel like for me, that was more, it wasn't necessarily because I was a woman. It was more because I was Black and she was interested, but it was a complete violation of like space. Like, why are you touching me? You know what I mean? Things like that.
Right. Wow. Interesting. Anybody else?
I think when it comes to African Americans in the work environment, in certain environments, I don't think we even get to the gender part. I think just piggybacking what Ms. Smith says, like they so focus on the ethnicity and our looks, our feel, we don't even get to the gender part. It's like they're so, and certain people so enamored with the culture of it, we don't get to the gender of the person.
Okay.
It's like if that makes sense.
What I'm hearing you say, Jason, is gender is really a non-issue in the workplace. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I'm not saying it's not. I absolutely definitely is a problem in the workplace, especially if you talk about equal rights and equal pay. But I'm talking about in this particular subject, when we're talking about African Americans, I don't think that our gender is not, I think that's the last thing that's focused upon. I think we're still stuck on the color of the person instead of the gender of the person.
Okay, got you.
So I'd like to share that I think any discrimination is a problem in general, and any discrimination as a result of what you can't hide, as in what people can see, and they can make assumptions as a result of that, is going to be a problem in general. There is gender discrimination, there's race discrimination. I've experienced it, whether that was the intent or not, that's what I felt. And so I do think it's prevalent. And that was a question. Have you experienced it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do think it's the same. I don't think it's any different. It's still harmful to you personally and could be harmful to your career.
Thanks, Deborah. Well, let's get down to dollars and cents. I think, Jason, you alluded to dollars and cents. So I just want to share a statistic. This is actually just from last year. Look at the difference in earning potential, earning power between white men, white women, black men, and black women. This is real. This is not a bottom line statistic, guys. There's still discrimination both by gender and by race, and it hits your pocketbook in a certain way. Okay. So white men obviously are at the top, followed by white women, then black men, and then black women in terms of pay earning potential. So yes, yeah, it does affect us. It does affect us. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to truth 4. So again, a strong statement. I think our panelists have some opinions around this. Arguably, white privilege is a root cause of some of these racial disparities. So when we say white privilege, go ahead, Grace. I know you've just been chomping at the bit here for this.
This part, get ready to be uncomfortable, but definitely pay attention to this. I think this is really eye-opening for a lot of people that don't understand the importance of this conversation that we're having today.
Okay, thanks, Grace. When we say white privilege, somebody, what are we saying here? What's the definition of white privilege? I'd like to hear from a white person, actually, if you know the definition of this, or you believe you understand what this is.
Born on third base, think you hit a triple.
Say that again, Rick.
You're born on third base, but you think you hit a triple.
Ah, that's a great one. I've never heard that before. You were born on third base, but you think you hit a triple. Wow, that's good. That's a good one. Is that original?
No, I think one of my old managers said that to me once.
That
or
is
at least
awesome.
he shared it. He shared it. Eugene
That's good.
had millions of quotes. It was a good one.
That's a good one. Anybody else?
He said it about my manager, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay. Somebody else.
I've seen this video and I love this video. So to me,
Mhm.
like, this video is it. And we're not all starting from the same place. We all haven't been given the same things, you know, whether it's 2 parents, you know, education,
Right.
3 meals a day. We don't
Yeah.
all start from the same place.
That's it. That's it. Well, let me just cut to the chase. White privilege is not saying that as a white person, your life hasn't been hard. It's simply saying that your skin color hasn't been a contributing factor. That's the difference. It's not to say that, you know, we all haven't had issues in life. It's just saying the color of your skin has not been a factor in the issues that you've experienced. And so Megan, she's seen that video. I'm sure others have seen this video. I want to play this video because I really think it hammers home what we're trying to say here. So listen up.
Hey, line up. Line up. Everybody line up. We're about to race. Everybody line up. Shoulder to shoulder. Take off your backpacks. Basketball, line up. We're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. A $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a private education. Take 2 steps forward if you had access to a free tutor growing up. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to worry about your cell phone being shut off. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills. Take 2 steps forward if it wasn't because of your athletic ability, you don't have to pay for college. Take 2 steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. I want you guys up here in the front just to turn around and look. Every statement I've made has nothing to do with anything any of you have done. Has nothing to do with decisions you've made. Everything I have said has nothing to do with what you've done. We all know these people over here have a better opportunity to win this $100. Does that mean these people back here can't race? No. We would be foolish to not realize we've been given more opportunity. We don't want to recognize that we've been given a head start. But the reality is we have. Now, there's no excuse. They still got to run their race. You still got to run your race. But whoever wins this $100, I think it'd be extremely foolish of you not to utilize that and learn more about somebody else's story. Because the reality is, if this was a fair race and everybody was back on that line, I guarantee you some of these black dudes would smoke all of you. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life. That is a picture of life, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you've done has put you in the lead that you're in right now. When I say go, on your mark, get set, go. If you didn't learn anything from this activity, you're a fool.
Wow. I've seen this so many times and it still gets me choked up. Woo. What are your thoughts? What did you take away from this? Anybody?
For me, yeah, it's definitely like a tearjerker. I don't want to get emotional, but I think my thought process is a little bit different. Like I think that it is a eye opener for people that are non-Black to be like, wow, you know, we really do have a head start. But I feel like being a Black person and watching this and watching so many of the Black kids in the back, it's just kind of like bittersweet because it's still, to me, a representation of like how much of a foot is on African Americans' necks in terms of trying to survive and trying to be great and trying to get those head starts that may not be generationally passed down. And again, that it has a root to a lot of systems put in place to kind of hold us back. So for me, that's kind of what affected me, because it's just like, you know, it still just really sucks to see how far we've come, but how far we have to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Gerald, your thoughts on this?
It is frustrating. I have experienced, you know, in the corporate space, I have experienced this in a corporate space. I think the part of this video that stands out to me, there's two things. First, the people who are ahead before they understand what's actually going on, right? They're jumping, they're happy, right? Oh, I'm about to get $100 and I'm walking even closer towards it. They're actually not even paying attention to the people who are behind them, right? And then the other part is to Anya's point, the kids who are in the back, and how this exercise not only physically showed them the disparity between, you know, their privilege, but also emotionally, because you could see on the faces of those kids, you know, there were some kids who were holding hands and walking together. There were some kids, when the race actually started, they knew that they were so far back that they didn't even try, right? And so those are the things in the video that really stand out to me personally.
Thank you, Gerald. I echo all of your sentiments there. All right, so we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Any other thoughts on Truth 4?
Just to go with what Gerald said, I kind of liked the fact that some of the kids at the back were visibly running harder than anybody else. And I'd like to think that some of those people in the front would have looked back and said to somebody, hey, get up here. You know, like, so I would like to think that I'm a type of person that would do that. And I know a lot of people that are at the point that they're like, hey, get up here. So I don't know. Hopefully, I think we're heading in the right direction. So
thanks, Herb. I do too.
Herb, to your point, I really appreciate you saying that. I would say that when I first started here at the Judge Group, I was very adverse to this group. I thought it was very possible. I didn't really know what would happen just because of the experiences that I've had in the past. Now that I have spent a substantial amount of time talking to people who have experienced some of the same things that I have, that's why I'm here, and trying to bring people who have had some of the same experiences that I've had as a Black man in the corporate space up to where I am today. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you,
Pleasure
guys.
working with you.
Get to know each other. I'm going to skip Truth 5 in the interest of time.
Question? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Joy.
Okay, sorry about
Go
that.
ahead. No, go for
And
it.
this, I'm going to throw myself out there because, and this might be the definition of white privilege. I'm not sure, but watching that video was I've never seen it before. So I thought it was really great. And I was doing the own, like how my son would answer that. And this is going to go to Anya. And I don't think I've ever met Anya, but hi. Like, I'm a single divorced mom too. Hi. And when I tell people that if I'm a single mom, I never for 1 second ever thought in my head, they think I wasn't married or I had a child out of wedlock. So like when she said that to me, it like made me think, because I'm like, I have never felt I never thought to think, what are they thinking about that on the other end? It's not a, you know what I mean, a thing. But when I watched that video, like if this truth number 4 is about white privilege, but not one of those questions asked about race. It asked, were you, did you grow up in a home with 2 parents? Did you have a father figure? Like not one of those.
Great point. Great point, Joy. Great point.
Yeah, that is a great point, Joy.
To that point, Joy, I think it's because of years of, when if people were enslaved, then you aren't able to acquire anything and you weren't able to have anything, and it's generational like discrepancies in what someone had access to acquire for themselves. People could work themselves literally to death and have nothing at the end of the day. So it was not, and by proxy, a white farm owner or landowner who was enslaving those people would have gained financially from them. So the cracks that created, the discrepancy that created a very long time ago, maybe, but not, it's still here. It's still, there's echoes of it through generations, but that doesn't mean that it can't get better and that we can't fix it. But we have to acknowledge that the crack was there, that these discrepancies in background, opportunity, education, all those things can exist because of a previous mistake of another generation.
Right.
Thanks,
and I understand that, right? Like so you're saying like it's still like an uphill battle, like it's still we're certain people are starting from a different line.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And I just was wondering, because again, when you say the white privilege, and then when I saw that video, I just didn't know that, like, for me, that resonated as much as like some of the other things they were talking about. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joy. Thanks, Bern. All right, so we are past the hour. I'm going to just quickly go to the end and just a 30-second plug for the Empowering People of Color ERG. So yes, bonus truth number 6, you can absolutely be part of the solution. I would like to invite everybody who attended today's conversation to be a part of the Empowering People of Color ERG. We provide a forum to freely express issues and challenges. We're looking to identify and eliminate practices that reflect implicit bias. We want to raise the voice. I think we're doing that of the people of color within our organization. And we invite all people of color or non-people of color as members or as allies to be a part of this movement. So thank you again for joining us today, guys. Reach out to me if you'd like to be a part of this group. I can't thank you enough for joining and taking an hour of your time to meet with us today. Okay? Okay, now. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Bye.